Most of the voyage was uneventful. It was nearly 11 p.m. at night, so there was hardly any other vehicles on the road. Upon crossing the bridge the first time, nothing happened. During that time, the bridge was newly constructed. It was put up the year before after the original bridge was ravaged by the last typhoon. The city even put streetlights on the new bridge for better visibility. That was a huge deal since none of the other surrounding roads had streetlights. We arrived at the next town and I helped my uncle load up the supplies. Well, at least as much as a small 6-year-old can. On the way back home was when it happened. I was sitting in the back seat, absent-mindedly looking out the window when I felt the car slow down. We were almost at the bridge and I noticed that something wasn't right. I was too small to see over the seat and out the windshield, but I could tell that all the lights on the bridge were off. At this point, the car slowed to a crawl. "Hey, sport, why don't you lie down and take a little nap?" my uncle said from the front. Something in his voice didn't sound right. It sounded like he was scared and was struggling to hide it. "No, that's okay. I'm not tired. Please, just do it for me, okay?" He sounded stern but measured. My uncle was usually an easygoing guy, so when he got serious, you should pay attention. "Okay," I said as I laid down on the seat sideways. I briefly saw my uncle's eyes in the rearview mirror. They showed unmistakable fear. I felt the familiar bump that signaled that we were on the bridge. Then the car stopped. "Close your eyes, okay? No matter what, keep them closed." "Okay." I started to get scared. I didn't know what was happening or why I had to close my eyes. Regardless, I shut them tight. Then, the strangest thing happened. My uncle started to sing. It was a traditional Filipino folk song and I'd only heard it once before. About a year ago, my aunt and uncle got into a shouting match, as in a things were thrown across the room type of shouting match. I was at their house at the time and my cousins and I stayed in their room, cowering and waiting for the storm to pass. An hour later, my uncle entered the room and apologized for the shouting. He then started singing that song to lull us to sleep. The melody was beautiful, and I'd never known my uncle could sing that well. He never did it again. At least not until that moment, when we were in that dark bridge. The song sounded just as beautiful, but I could tell his voice was shaking. His car wasn't that big, but I was a small child and there was a lot of room in the second row. I was lying down on the seat perpendicular to the windows, trying and hoping for sleep to come. Instead, something else arrived. Click, click. I heard the familiar mechanism of the headlights flashing. All of a sudden, I sensed that I wasn't alone in that second row anymore. My spatial awareness of the car told me that there was someone or something else sitting right next to me. We had gained another passenger. I shut my eyes even tighter as my uncle began to drive. The temperature inside the car became cold. I curled myself into a ball, seeking refuge from whatever it was that was now right next to me. I didn't know much about ghosts and supernatural creatures at that age, and though I couldn't see it, something told me that I was in the presence of something not of this world. My uncle finished the song and started over again. I was amazed that he was able to keep his composure. I refused to open my eyes. I could hear her, so uncomfortably close next to me. At first, I heard what sounded like clicking. As it increased in volume, it sounded like stalks of celery being twisted and broken. Crack, 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 crack. It was unnerving. Those sounds weren't normal. They were all around me. We finally crossed over the bridge, but she was still there. I was so scared I could barely move. The car hit a bump which caused me to slide to the side. Closer to her. I felt damp cloth against my leg. My breaths became shallow and I started to cry. I don't know what compelled me to do it, but I opened my eyes for a split second. In that split second, I saw her. A brief flash of white with stringy damp hair on her head, blacker than night. She was turned away from me. I blinked the tears from my eyes. When I opened them again, the mass of black hair was now right in front of my face. I shut my eyes tight again. After what seemed like an eternity, the car hit a familiar curve on the road that signaled the entrance into our town. I felt that entity come even closer to me. By this time, my uncle was silent. No more songs. The air became even colder right next to my face and I shook. not from the cold, but from terror. Then she spoke, right into my ear.
It was a hushed whisper, lower than any whisper I've ever heard. I couldn't make out what she said. It didn't sound threatening or angry. It sounded sad. And then she was gone. I immediately felt the difference. I could no longer feel another presence in the car, and the air went from cold to tropical humid again. I heard my uncle breathe a sigh of relief. I didn't open my eyes until we had reached the safety of the farm. My uncle had to carry me back inside and straight into my bed, and only then did I open my eyes. From what I could recall, we never spoke of that night to anyone, not even each other, ever again. Subsequent trips across the bridge at night never resulted in another white lady sighting, at least not for me. I'd find out later that in the early 80s, a woman was found dead at the bottom of that bridge. People said that she was traveling to the next town and was hoping to catch a ride with any passing vehicles. It was late at night and she had no family nearby that could give her a ride. No one knows what really happened, but many suspected that it was murder. After my trip back to the Philippines, I couldn't stop thinking about that night at the bridge. How could I forget such an incredible and terrifying experience? I guess it doesn't matter since I remember it now. But there was something else I realized about that night, something I hadn't remembered before. When I heard her whisper, I thought I only heard unintelligible garble. But that's not true. She did say something. She said, "Maraming salamat." Translated to English, that means, "Thank you very much."